thought for a couple of seconds. I'm going on a date. That's how she dropped the bomb on me. Merlin, my wife of 6 years, walked up to me one evening and said those exact words. At first, I thought it was a joke. I even laughed and said, "Yeah, right, you got me." But she wasn't joking. She stood there with her arms crossed, staring at me with that dead serious look in her eyes. When I realized she meant it, I honestly didn't know what to say. You never expect your spouse to just tell you she's going out with another man. I sat there for a solid 10 minutes trying to process it. Why? Was all I could ask. Why would she want to do something like this? She shrugged and told me she was bored. Life had become too predictable. She said she needed something exciting, something new to shake things up, and apparently going on a date with a coworker was her idea of a thrill. I reminded her we'd talked about how things felt stale. We both knew it. We'd suggested fixes, date nights, weekend getaways, trying new activities together. I thought we were on the same page. She cut me off and said none of that was enough. She needed more. That's when she mentioned him. Her co-worker, some guy named Brandon. According to Merlin, they'd been talking about how their marriages felt dull, and Brandon had similar issues with his wife. So they came up with this brilliant plan to go out together and see if it would, I don't know, make them feel alive again. She tried to convince me it was no big deal. Just two people going out for dinner, she said. It's nothing serious. How is it nothing serious? I asked. You're literally calling it a date. She sighed like I was being difficult. I'm just being transparent with you, she said. You always say communication is important, right? That's what I'm doing. I was speechless. Transparent. Communication. She acted as if this were a normal conversation, like we were discussing weekend plans. My mind was racing, but all I could focus on was that my wife was telling me she was about to go on a date with someone else. Then she did what she always does when things get uncomfortable. She walked away. She told me she was running late, that she needed to get ready, and that it wasn't a good time to argue. Merlin left me mid-sentence and disappeared into the bedroom. 5 minutes later, she walked out, wearing a red dress. She looked incredible, like she'd put in all this effort to impress him. Not me, not her husband. She smiled at me, completely calm, as if nothing was wrong. It's just dinner, she said, like that should make me feel better. Don't make a big deal out of it. She kissed me on the cheek and added, we'll talk about it later. Then she left. I sat on the couch, stunned. I tried to tell myself it was just a meal, but deep down I knew this was more. This could wreck everything we'd built together. Hours passed. My mind kept replaying her leaving in that red dress, and the single word date echoed in my head. She hadn't cared how I felt. It was as if I weren't even part of the decision. Merlin had made up her mind. I tried to distract myself, but every little thing reminded me. The TV, the phone, the ticking clock made the silence louder. I thought about calling her, but what would I say? How's the date going? That would be ridiculous. Instead, I called my buddy Mike and asked if he wanted to grab a beer. I couldn't just sit there. Mike could tell something was wrong the moment I arrived. He asked, but I didn't want to lay it all out. It felt too raw, too embarrassing. So I framed it like it was someone else's problem. It's my co-worker who's going through this, I said, recounting the situation as if I were seeking advice for a friend. Mike shrugged. It's just dinner, man, he said between sips. They're out in public. Nothing's going to happen at a restaurant. To him, it was normal. To me, my world felt upside down. What if it doesn't stop there? I said. He paused and said, if it doesn't stop, you'll cross that bridge when you get to it. Right now, all you know is she's having dinner with a coworker. Don't jump to conclusions. Maybe he was right, but that didn't make it easier. After a couple of beers, I felt a little better, or maybe just numb. I tried to change the subject, but it kept creeping back. What if they weren't just talking? What if this was exactly what it sounded like? A real date. Around 9, my phone buzzed. Merlin had messaged me to come home. She was already back. I wasn't sure how to feel. Relieved, angry, confused, all the above. Mike noticed me checking my phone and asked if everything was okay. I said I had to go, paid for our drinks, and left. When I got home, she was on the couch like nothing had happened. She smiled as if it were any other night. "So how was it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Merlin lit up. "It was great," she said. "We had a really good time. It was fun, exciting. Exciting." She looked happy, like she'd gained something I couldn't give her. That's when she dropped the next bomb. "We're thinking of doing a weekend trip next, just to, see where things go." A weekend trip? This wasn't just dinner anymore. I stood up, trying to stay composed, but my hands were shaking. "You're planning a trip with him?" I asked. She was calm. "It's just for fun, babe. You don't need to worry. It's not like I don't love you. This is just something different, fun, exciting. Different, fun, exciting." Those words bounced in my head as I realized this wasn't the Merlin I married. This wasn't a phase. It was something else. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Merlin was next to me, fast asleep, like she had no worries. She hadn't asked how I felt. She'd suggested going away with another man, then curled up like it was normal. It was so casual to her. I kept glancing at her, wondering how she could be okay with this. How she could be eager to spend a weekend with someone else while I was here falling apart. I tried telling myself I was overreacting, that maybe it really was just harmless fun. But then I'd catch myself. This wasn't normal for us, not for who I thought we were. At some point in the middle of the night, I got up and went to the living room. I needed space to think, to breathe. The house was so quiet it felt unnerving, like I was the only person left. I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone, but nothing distracted me. My thoughts kept circling back. Is this really happening? Is my wife actually going to sleep with another man this weekend? I want to confront her, to shake her awake and demand answers, but part of me knew it wouldn't change anything. She'd already made up her mind. Every time I imagined conversation, I could see exactly how it would end. She'd tell me it was nothing to worry about, that she loved me, and that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. But how could it be nothing when she seemed willing to throw away our marriage for the so-called excitement? By sunrise, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to sit around while she left me emotionally. If she was going to act as if I didn't matter, I had to take control. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I dressed for work and went back to the bedroom. She was still asleep, looking peaceful and innocent, like the woman who had just shattered our life had nothing on her conscience. When I reached for my keys, she stirred and woke. She smiled, came up behind me and hugged me. "I love you," she whispered, as if everything were fine. I pushed her away, not violently, but enough to make it clear I wasn't playing along. She stared at me with wide, confused eyes. "Are you still mad about last night?" she asked, as if I could simply shrug it off. "I know you're upset now, but you love me enough to let me be happy, don't you?" I said nothing. I grabbed my things and walked out without looking back. At work, I was useless. I couldn't focus on anything. Every task, every noise reminded me of her and the trip she was planning with him. I kept watching the clock, counting down the hours until Saturday, until it all became real. I felt trapped, certain that no matter what I did, the outcome would be the same. Even if she didn't realize it, our marriage was already over. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay while she chased this fantasy. Then it hit me. I couldn't just sit there and let it happen. If she was going to blow up our life, I wasn't going down quietly. I began to form a plan. I didn't know every detail yet, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't let her keep walking over me. I had to do something to regain control. By Friday, I felt a jumble of anger, disbelief, and frustration. I kept telling myself there had to be a way to fix this. But deep down, I knew it was too late. She was going through with that weekend trip with Brandon, as if our marriage didn't matter. That evening, Merlin spent hours getting ready. There was an excitement in her eyes, like she was preparing for a dream vacation. It was sickening to watch. She bought new clothes, even lingerie, and she twirled in front of me asking how she looked. For him, not for me. I wanted to scream and tell her she was making the biggest mistake of her life. But what good would that do? She'd already decided. "Don't be so dramatic," she said, rolling her eyes as she applied her makeup. "It's just a weekend. You'll see." I'll come back feeling refreshed, and everything will be better between us. Refreshed, as if this were a spa retreat, and not a weekend that could ruin us. I kept my mouth shut. I had my own plans. Earlier that day, I bought a new lock for the front door. I wasn't going to let her waltz back into my life after this. The second she left, I would change the locks and remove her for good. I'd even made an appointment with an attorney that afternoon. I wasn't going to sit around and let her decide everything. I was taking control. I didn't tell her any of it. She was so wrapped up in her own fantasy, she probably wouldn't have cared. As she packed her bags, humming like she was off on an adventure, I watched, knowing this was it. There was no coming back. Right before she left, she came over to me, dressed to the nines, and kissed my cheek. I love you, babe. Don't forget that. This is just for fun, okay? We'll be even better after this. I couldn't speak. I was too angry, too hurt. She walked out, bags in hand, and I didn't look at her again. The moment I heard the car pull out of the driveway, I sprang into action. The locksmith I'd put on standby arrived quickly, and within the hour the locks were changed. I wasn't letting her back into our home like nothing had happened. After the locksmith left, I sat at the kitchen table and looked around. The house felt empty. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her shoes sat by the door, but it was as if she wasn't here anymore. She had already left in every way that mattered. I went to the bedroom, gathered all her things, clothes, shoes, makeup, stuffed them into heavy trash bags, dragged them into the backyard, and left them there, like trash. I wasn't dealing with this anymore. She'd made her choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. When I finished, I sat on the couch and stared at the door. It was strange, knowing she wouldn't come back the way she expected to. She probably imagined waltzing in, telling me how amazing her weekend had been, and pretending everything was fine. That won't happen, I thought. Not anymore. For the first time in days, I could breathe. I felt a small, cold relief, a sense of control returning. I knew a long road lay ahead. Lawyers, divorce papers, the whole process. But for that moment, it was over. I'd made my decision. Saturday morning, I woke early. Merlin was gone on her little getaway with Brandon, and the house was deathly quiet. The stillness sat in my bones, but I didn't mind. I had work to do. This wouldn't be a weekend for pity. The first thing I did was call my attorney. We'd already spoken the day before, but I wanted to confirm everything for the divorce. He advised me to gather proof. Confirmation of their hotel stay would help speed things up. Apparently, hotels will share that information with lawyers when it's part of a case. After that, I went through Merlin's phone. We'd always known each other's passwords. I'd never had a reason check before, but now I needed to see what she and Brandon had been saying. I expected nothing surprising, but I had to know. What I found matched my worst fears. Dozens of messages about their plans, how excited they were for the weekend. They claimed they hadn't slept together yet, but the texts were full of flirtation and hints. It was disgusting to read, but I photographed every message. I needed proof, every piece of it. I kept reading until I found their conversation about the resort. She hadn't told me where they'd be staying, but there it was in the messages. Some isolated retreat in the middle of nowhere, a resort tucked into the forest. The perfect place for her to vanish and pretend she wasn't married. I forwarded the details to my attorney, and he said he'd take care of the rest. By then, I didn't even care what happened between them. The fact she'd gone through with it was enough. Our marriage was dead the moment she walked out. But I wasn't finished. While packing the last of her things into trash bags, a petty idea popped into my head. A small act of retaliation, nothing extreme. Just something to remind her what she was risking. I rummaged through her suitcase. Yes, it was petty, but I didn't care anymore. I found the tube of lubricant she'd packed. Of course she'd brought one. And swapped it with a similar-looking tube of white sauce from the kitchen. I couldn't help but laugh at the thought of her realizing it. It wasn't about the shock. It was about sending a message. You can't walk away unscathed. You made your bed. Now lie in it. Literally. I spent the rest of the day out. I met Mike, told him what I'd done, and for the first time in days, I felt a sliver of satisfaction. The situation wasn't fixed. Far from it. But taking action, regaining a bit of agency, mattered. When I came home, that evening the house felt different. It was still empty and quiet, but no longer like a tomb. It felt like a fresh start. I walked through the rooms where her things had been, and instead of grief, I felt lighter. She was gone, and that was what I needed. I didn't know whether she'd come back contrite or never come back at all, but I didn't care. The locks were changed. Her things were packed, and I was ready to move forward. I was done with the lies, the disrespect, and the marriage. It was time to reclaim my life. Sunday evening, Merlin returned. I'd been waiting, not because I wanted her back, but because I knew this was when everything would finally reach a turning point. I watched her car pull up on the front door camera. She looked unlike the confident woman who'd left. Hair tangled, makeup smudged, exhausted. The weekend had clearly not gone as she'd imagined. She fumbled with the key and then stopped. Of course the lock had been changed. She stared, bewildered, then pounded on the door, calling my name, demanding to know why it was locked. I didn't answer. I let her panic for a few minutes. I wanted her to feel shut out, to sense a loss of control. She called me. I let it ring twice, then sent a text. Look at the sign in the yard. I'd replaced the old nameplate, our shared name, with only mine. She read it, and the realization hit her like a punch. Her composure crumbled. She begged, cried, and pleaded to be let in, apologizing, claiming she'd made a mistake, that she was cold and tired and just wanted to come inside. When I opened the door, she was a wreck. Tears streaked down her face, shaking from the cold. She tried to rush past me, but I stopped her at the threshold. I wasn't going to make it easy. What happened? I asked, my voice calm, like I was talking to a stranger. She collapsed onto the couch and spilled everything at once. It hadn't gone the way she expected, she said. Brandon had pushed her. Things between them weren't what she'd imagined. She claimed she felt guilty and hadn't really wanted to go through with it, but she hadn't stopped it either. She said they tried to have sex, but it failed. Then she mentioned the lubricant, the one I'd swapped. She told me she'd realized something was wrong when she went to use it, panicked, and told Brandon she couldn't do it. They argued and he left early. She sounded frantic, fishing for sympathy, begging for forgiveness. But I wasn't interested. I stood with my arms folded, listening as she spun excuses and blamed him, blamed confusion, anything to avoid owning her choice. The panic in her eyes told me she'd finally seen the consequences. The door she'd assumed she could always walk back to was closed. When her excuses ran out, she looked up and asked, "Can we fix this? I love you. I made a mistake, but we can fix it, right?" I shook my head. "No, Merlin, we can't." I didn't yell or argue. I said it plainly. This ended the second you walked out on Friday. You knew what you were doing, and now you have to live with it. She sobbed, begged me not to throw away everything we built, promising never do anything like again. It was too late. She clung to an illusion that no longer existed. I'd already made my peace. I opened the door and told her it was time to go. She gathered her things, shot me one last desperate look, and left. "You'll get the divorce papers soon," I said as she walked away. That was it. She was gone for real this time. I stood there a moment, letting it sink in. The house had changed, but this time it felt right. It was mine again.